This is IAQ Radio, Indoor Air Quality Radio, the voice of the indoor air quality industry, with your hosts, Radio Joe Hughes and the Z-Man, Cliff Zlotnick. And now, Radio Joe Hughes.
Good day and welcome to IAQ Radio Plus. It's episode 732. This week we welcome Seth Harrison, the Executive Director of Actionable Insights, for a discussion on scoping and billing restoration projects. Actionable has built a product that helps ensure restoration contractors get all the money they deserve. Don't leave money on the table. Learn more on IAQ Radio Plus. IAQ Radio Association sponsors are AIHA, the American Industrial Hygiene Association, at AIHA.org. IICRC, the Institute for Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification, at IICRC.org. The Restoration Industry Association, RIA, at restorationindustry.org. The Environmental Information Association, EIA, at EIA-USA.org. Actionable Insights at getinsights.org. IAQ Radio industry sponsors are Particles Plus at particlesplus.com, BioPlanet at byoplanet.com.
And now you can win a cool prize. It's time for the IAQ Radio trivia question. Be the first to correctly answer. Simply email your answer to czlotnick at cs.com. Or if listening live, just text your answer from your computer. And now, here's the Z-Man.
Hello, everyone. Congratulations go out to Dawn Weeks, Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, who was first to identify endotoxin as the heat-stable bacterial poison responsible for the pathophysiological consequences of certain infectious diseases that Richard Pfeiffer intellectually and experimentally conceived. Here's today's IAQ Radio trivia question. In what year did Xactware open for business with their Xactimate estimating system? Back to you, Joe.
All right. After learning the ins and outs of claims settlement as a project manager and program estimator, Seth Harrison joined Actionable Insights in 2017 to co-author a 3,000-plus page book of Xactimate invoicing templates. As an Xactimate certified trainer and Matterport certified trainer, Harrison has traveled the country to help estimators and adjusters adopt remote and centralized job processes to improve industry efficiency and reduce claims frictions. Welcome, Seth. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you, gentlemen. How are we doing today?
We are just wonderful. It's almost the weekend, buddy.
Woo!
That's right. It's a beautiful day on the mountain. Seth, tell us a little bit about your background, if you would, and how you got involved with Actionable.
Sure. I am from San Diego, California. I went to the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia for 4 years, where I happened to study insurance. In fact, I was one of 3 in my entire graduating class with a concentration in insurance. 2 of them were going to Vegas to gamble professionally. They were much more interested in the risk statistics side of insurance.
No kidding.
Yeah, but I graduated. I worked for an insurance broker for a bit. I then sold Aflac Insurance as a 1099 employee, running around San Diego for a while. And I realized I just wasn't enjoying it. It just was not fun. And I talked to my old insurance broker boss, and I said, I was about 24 at the time. I said, hey, looking for something different. I don't care what industry it is. It does not have to be insurance. And they said, we do insurance for a large contractor here in San Diego that just got a $6 million occupied residency repipe job. Now, that phrase at the time was foreign to me. Occupied residency repipe. What does that mean? I don't know. I'm not in this industry. I don't know what it is. But I met down with the contractor who basically said, hey, we don't know you. And I said, and I don't know you, and I don't know your industry, but I promise I'm really good at learning, and I'll work really, really hard. And about 6 months later, I became the superintendent of that project. I became an estimator doing program claims for nationwide for this contractor for about 3 years. So joining this industry was just huge sponge time, like time to absorb anything and everything I can find. I'm very grateful for 3 years of experience in the field, running around, running a large job, settling claims with adjusters. But around 2016, I ended up taking an Xactimate class from a little company called Actionable Insights. At the time, it was just Mark Watley. He had founded it in 2015 as a 501c6 educational nonprofit that was training Xactimate primarily at the time. And when I met Watley and I took his class, I think he'll tell you I was one of his best students and one of his worst students, mostly meaning annoying. I ask a lot of questions. My favorite question in the world is why? But why? But why? But why? As a program estimator, I was taught everything you can't do. And that's incredibly frustrating for somebody who wants to do great work. You just keep being told what you can't do. So meeting Watley, meeting Actionable Insights, I ended up buying Watley a beer at the end of that class. And I said, I want to come work for you. You know things. Actionable has goals. You want to do stuff with this thing. And overall, the founding mission of Actionable has been to preserve the health of the restoration ecosystem. And for somebody who had been thrown in the fire, learned quickly, but recognized that there is a lot of difficulty in this industry, that anybody can join it. Doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what your experience is. You have an opportunity in this industry, which is special. But that there was a lot of work because there was a lot of friction in the claims process, a lot of waste, a lot of inefficiency, and there had to be better ways to do things. There had to be. And that's essentially what Actionable has been trying to do ever since. Great resources that help people fight less and enjoy their job more.
So you're a smart guy. Went to the University of Pennsylvania. You don't get in there unless you got a little bit of an IQ there, I guess we'll say, and
maybe an IAQ.
IAQ. There you go.
That's right.
And you got into the insurance, which is very interesting. I wonder, have you found during your time that insurance carriers really want to fairly settle a claim?
I do. If you look at the carrier overall, absolutely. Absolutely. And I remember when I was an early trainer and even speaker on stages in this industry at various conferences. And I used to, I'm a former contractor. I have not had all wonderful experiences with adjusters. And when I would speak about the carrier side as a trainer, I didn't always have the nicest things to say, but it generally went something like, hey, carriers want to pay out as little as possible, exactly what they need to. And I once had an adjuster come up to me after I spoke on stage and said, hey, I did not appreciate the way that you characterize adjusters. That's not true. That's not how we go.
Huh.
We want to pay what is owed. We don't want to pay more. We don't want to pay less, but we want to pay what is owed. And when you characterized it as we want to pay as little as possible, that's not an accurate representation of what we're really trying to do here. And so, Joe, I think the hardest part is it comes down to the individuals. It comes down to the people. It comes down to the individual reviewer, the adjuster, who you're working with, what do they have on their plate. One of the things I try to do when we train is drive some empathy for adjusters. Adjusters often have 10 times as many claims as an individual estimator, would have at a contractor that they're responsible for. So there's a lot on their plate. It's not all easy. I think, Joe, one of the hardest things is, do you recognize that there is no standard of invoicing in this industry? Think about that. This is a $200 billion industry every year, and there is no standard of invoicing. Almost everybody's self-taught or peer-taught in the invoicing platforms in the industry. We read words in Xactimate that says this line item is for this, and then we argue about what those words mean constantly. And so we need to have some kind of standard. Medical insurance has a standard of invoicing. Auto insurance has an incredibly efficient standard of invoicing, but we don't have that in property insurance. Part of that's by design. Every house is different. Every claim is different. Every state is different. Every policy is different. So it is hard to standardize things. But I think it's pretty easy for our industry to get together. Look at, hey, what am I doing in the field? Okay. What are the line items that I would typically use to charge for these activities? And then how would I use documentation and F9 notes to justify those line items? That's where Actionable started. What are people doing? What are the line items that would be reasonably and customary to use for that activity? How do you document and justify it so that a carrier can look at it, understand it, and approve it with ease?
Cliff, let me turn it over to you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Joe. Okay. Historically, you've been around a while. Over the course of your tenure, both selling insurance and handling claims and adjusting and so on and so forth. Have you found that there has been more or less friction between contractors and insurance carriers over that period of time? Is it getting worse or is it getting better? And maybe why, if you have an idea.
Yeah. I feel it's getting worse. It's getting harder every year for contractors to do good work and get paid fairly to do that work. There's more obstacles, there's more burden on contractors every year. A couple examples. You asked why. Number one, the average tenure of an adjuster right now in the property insurance industry is around 28 months. Almost 2 years they're in the industry and out of the industry. And that means they don't have a ton of in the field experience. That means they don't have potentially have the building methodology experience that we need them to have to be able to review and approve quickly and efficiently. This is not all adjusters, by the way, but just that's the average tenure. And I mean, for those of you that are in Los Angeles, California, you may know exactly what I'm talking about because it tends to be the training ground for new adjusters. So you get a lot of wacky experiences when you work with people that are settling their claims for the first time. So number one, Cliff, there's a change in the industry. The old guard is moving on. The new guard doesn't stick around for too long. And so we have a bit of an education problem. We have a bit of an experience problem. One of the other things that we'll talk about probably more later during this call, the average claim is currently revised approximately 3.7 times before it's settled. Contractor to carrier, carrier to contractor, contractor to carrier, carrier to contractor, and then maybe we get a settled claim. So there's changing of who's in the industry, how long they're in the industry. There's more arguing back and forth. Cliff, that's way higher than it used to be. We did not used to go back and forth 3.7 times. Like, that's way more than it should be. A contractor should be able to put together a scope, submit it to a carrier review it, maybe one round of review and feedback and pushback, but then we should get to work. Like, there shouldn't be 3 to 4 rounds where everybody's chasing their own tail just to help a homeowner out when they're in need.
What relationship would a TPA have in this friction? Do you think they make it worse? Do you think they make it better? Do you think that they're neutral? What's their role? How do they play?
And that's a third-party adjuster. So those who are listening in know what that is.
Yeah, managed repair programs and alike. I think it depends on who you ask, Cliff, what the value of a TPA is. If you ask a TPA, they will absolutely tell you, and are right, that, hey, they help manage the experience on behalf of the adjuster and the policyholder, that they are there to ensure a good outcome, right? There's a lot of regulations. There's a lot of rules about what you can and cannot do, what you can and cannot charge for, but that is the intended application of it. And I think more often than not, that works. But my personal experience with program as a program estimator for 3 years, it really came down to the reviewer, Cliff. It really came down to the actual individual that I was working with. I'm a gamer. I love sports. I love video games. I love games. You tell me the rule of the game and I will play it. But my one thing is, do not change the rules in the middle of the game, because if you change the rules, then it's a different game. And now I don't know what I'm playing, and it's harder for me to succeed. And I felt like in a lot of program environments, you have a document that defines what you can and cannot do, and then you are told, hey, you can't do something that is in the document that says that I can do that. And that gets really frustrating. I have a very specific example from 2019 in which I held up a claim for longer than I should have because they wouldn't pay for plant-based antimicrobial versus normal microbial. So small things like that. Cliff, I think a TPA is one of the important things to note about TPAs and program works. I don't know if you love a program work, if you hate program work, but there is a trend in the industry that people need to be aware of. The first notice of loss is going to the carrier more and more every year. People are not opening up the yellow pages or asking ChatGPT for a local contractor to call and when they have a loss. They call their agent or they call their carrier. And if the first notice of loss is going to the carrier more and more, that means more and more claims will be routed through the direction of program work. So I would advise anybody listening, like, even if you hate program work for the bottom of your heart, don't burn the bridge. Like, there is a trend in this industry where program work's not going away. And ultimately, there will be changes to that side of the industry for efficiency, for things like that, that I just want to make sure people are aware of. Like, there's a lot of negative context on program work. And on the flip side, as a trainer, We've had companies that have 70% of their work as program work and they want more of it. Like that's, you build a business around what you're good at. Ooh, this is a good segue here for me. Guys, one of the things that we talk about when we train contractors is that a contractor is only as good as the jobs that they say no to. Any contractor can take a job, but it takes a sophisticated contractor to know what's a good job for them and what's a bad job for them. And so we want to encourage people to say no to their bad jobs. Know what's good for you. Like, for some people, program work can be a good job for them, and others not. And one other program point here, Cliff. I thought this was really interesting. In 2020, we went to a contractor in Georgia, and we asked them, "Hey, let's see your margins. We're training. We want to know where the pain points are. Where are you making money? Where are you not making money?" And one of the analyses we did was a comparison of the margins between adjuster referral work and program work. And when people think about program work, they think hard, difficult, this is going to be a pain. And when they think about adjuster referral work, they go, yes, the adjuster likes me. I love this. They're giving me work. Wonderful. But the company was actually making higher margins on their program work, even when they were, paying back 5% to the program for being given the job. And we figured out why. It's because when people were doing adjuster referral work, they were more likely to concede. They were more likely to give up things to the adjuster with the hope of getting another job in the future. But when you're in a program environment, you know that every dollar matters, every line item matters. So you are less likely to concede, and you are more willing to, negotiate harder, essentially, to include all of the line items that you feel are warranted and justifiable in your scope. And so program work as a whole, I think has a valuable spot in our industry. I think there are aspects of it that will need to change for the efficiency. But because the first notice of loss is going to the carrier more and more every year, program work's not going away. And I would caution anybody from truly trying to make a whole enemy out of it and burn all their program bridges.
Seth, I got to follow up because I follow a lot of these Facebook groups with restoration contractors. It's not my background, but I like to learn what obstacles they're running into. What percentage of claims are handled through programs versus just through the adjuster? You seem like a guy that's really on top of your numbers, which I like.
Thank you. I love that you say that. I don't have this percentage off of the top of my head, but here's what I will generally say. I think there's been a trend where probably upwards of 20 to 30% of the work around the country has been program work over the last decade. Now, that is different depending on where you're at. If you are in Canada or Australia, what's up, Pete? You have a different environment. There is a much higher percentage of program work in those environments in Canada and Australia. And one of the reasons for that is America. We have 50 different states with 50 different insurance commissioners. The only thing that is truly standardized across our industry is the types of policies that exist. HO3 DP6 policies for property insurance. That is standardized across all 50 states. But for the most part, it's not. So California is different, Florida is different, Indiana is different. Every state has differences. So it's hard to say universally across America, here's this 20% of the work is program work all the time. But gotcha. Because it is going to be different everywhere. Don't get me into Florida and California insurance markets. Those are two unfortunately broken to anybody in Florida, to anybody in California. I feel you. I've trained in California. I've trained in Florida multiple times. I live in California. If anybody ever wonders, sorry, and let me apologize now to the Midwest, because all the funky thing in insurance starts in California and Florida and then slowly comes to the middle of the country. So I apologize to anybody in the middle of the country for what we do here in California and what they do in Florida in insurance.
Let me get one more quick one, then Cliff. Do you see the insurance industry moving toward or away from program work? Are there more, and will it someday be all program work?
I don't think it will ever be all program work. I don't think we could sustain a model like that at all. I don't think anybody could live in. I think we absolutely need contractors that are independent of program work, et cetera. Like one of the things, Joe, that I've lamented about over the year, people used to know the price of their DHU. They knew exactly what it cost to purchase, run it, maintain it, repair it, and then they knew exactly what the day cost was. But then programs like Xactimate came around, and people did not pay attention to the details of their finances over the last 10 years, like they always did. Often, and here's the example: when you call a contractor and you ask them, "What do you charge for a DHU?" Joe, what do you think they say? More often than not,
Per day,
yeah.
$35 a day or whatever it is.
But where do they pull that? Where do they pull that price from?
From Xactimate. Yep.
Yeah.
Xactimate price is $150 a day or whatever.
Okay.
So that's part of the problem, is that people honestly, they answer, "Oh, I charge what Xactimate charges," and things like that. And it gets worse. Joe, sometimes you would then ask them, "Hey, what if it's a non-insurance job? Would you charge more or less?" And what do people typically say?
Less.
And why
The
is
same.
that, Cliff?
Oh, less. Okay.
Well, less because number one, I think they think they're going to get their money faster.
Okay.
And then number two, I think that they, in certain programs, in certain insurance claims, there's a negotiation process. And they most likely believe that they are avoiding the negotiation process. But
yeah. I think you said that well. I mean, there's inherently, it's harder to work with insurance carriers. It's going to be more work to get the claim settled. It's more work to get paid, right? To collect the final check. It's all a problem. And so, Joe, I actually loved your answer when you said, if it's a non-insurance job, I would charge the same, because you should. That is typically what you would do. That's my price to do it. It doesn't matter if it's insurance or non-insurance. But Cliff, what you said is what a lot of people say when Xactimate calls them and asks, "What are you charging for a DHU?" They say Xactimate price. What do you charge if it's a non-insurance job? I charge less because I don't have to deal with all the crap of insurance. So,
well, I also think, just from my own experience with the local guy here, he charges less because he feels like the people can't afford it as well if they don't have insurance paying for it.
fair. And
he's just a good guy, you know. He's a good guy.
I love that policy. I mean, that's serving your community. That's what contractors are for, right? Of being available and helping people in their time of need.
True.
So I don't think well, just to summarize, I don't think we're ever going to have 100% program work. I don't think that's a reality in our industry. But like I said, the first notice of loss is going to the carrier more and more. So we should continue to see an upward trend in the amount of program work as long as that is happening.
Okay.
Seth, a good friend of mine who unfortunately passed away invented the air mover. Okay. And a guy named Lloyd Weaver. He's the first guy. He invented the air mover, invented on location drying and training program, and so on and so forth. This goes back to the 70s and 1980s. In that period of time, air movers were renting for around $25 a day. Okay. And to put it into perspective, this is a piece of equipment that probably at that time cost a couple of $100. Okay. At that time, you could rent a car for $25 a day. Okay, so you have an insurance company who sells both auto insurance and homeowners insurance, and they're looking at kind of rental bills. Well, this guy wrecked his car and he needs a rental car for a week or for 2 weeks. It's $25 a day. And this guy is going to put a fan, into this house, and they're charging me $25 a day. So I think in certain situations going way, way back, the pricing originated with what the instructor told the student that they should be charging. I don't know that it was really based in reality, and I don't believe that it was based in rental from the rental industry either, because the rental industry, if you're renting an electric drill or an electric hammer or something like that, there's a 4-hour rate, there's a daily rate, there's a weekly rate, there's a monthly rate, and all of that ends up being amortized. So I think we kind of got off really on the wrong foot to begin with, and I think insurance companies have been trying to take back or claw back ever since.
Yeah, understood. I think when you go back to the 70s and 80s, and I love the trivia question for today's session.
Right.
I won't give. I know the answer, and I will not say it.
Our guys are so smart. I posted it at 12:03. We had a correct answer at 12:04. So
nice.
these guys are smart.
Yeah. one of the things I love that you brought up air movers. Do you know, and I'm 99% confident in this. I think the first line item ever created in Xactimate was WTR dry. It's the line item for air movers.
Gotcha.
And you can tell that it was the first line item ever created because when you look at new line items, they are complex with their selector codes. It's DRY 1/2 minus, it's PLM or CLN DODR CRY. It's complex. But what was the first line item? WTR dry. We need a line item to toss in an air mover and dry a place.
That's right.
I love the history of that line item and that creation by Lloyd here of like, it's one of the first. I talk about that when I train all the time. WTR dry. We need a line item to dry. Oh, WTR dry. Got it. Nailed it. Crushed it. First time. Perfect line item. So I do understand that. If you go back to the 80s, if you ever visit Lehigh, Utah, and you go look in the Xactware office, the Verisk office in Utah, they have a set of the original floppy drives that people would use because the way Xactimate got their pricing back when we had our very late 80s and early 90s gateway PCs was that they would mail floppy disks around the country to contractors. Contractors would put their pricing of their equipment, their air movers and alike on the floppy disk. And then he would mail the floppy disk back to Utah. And then that's how we got our pricing back in the day. That's what it is. And I'm looking at the San Diego price right now for an air mover. It's around $30 a day. And I think I can rent a car, Cliff, for around anywhere between really cheap, like $30 a day, but more likely $70 a day. One of the things that we train, one of the tenets we have is price is only an issue in the absence of value. If something's worth it, you'll pay for it. And when an air mover is able to mitigate damage to a property to minimize the financial severity of a loss, like, I don't know, would you rather pay thousands of dollars in damages or a $25 charge for an air mover to limit the amount of damage that is done in this property? So price, I love this concept of price is only an issue in the absence of value. Like, if it's worth it, you'll pay for it. If it's not worth it, you won't pay for it. So what does that mean? It comes down to how do you document? How do you justify? How do you present? If you can explain why everything that you did and invoiced for is not an issue, like price is only an issue in the absence of value, then you would be okay. So I understand the concept there, Cliff.
Well, let me just change subjects for a minute. Let's go back to, you first met Watley and you went to this training class and so on and so forth. And you said that the company was founded as a nonprofit. What's the story behind that or why?
Sure. Actionable Insights is a 501c6 educational nonprofit. Essentially, we are a trade association. We have a volunteer board of directors that is half contractor, half adjuster. And why did Actionable be founded? Why were we founded as a nonprofit? About 10 to 15 years ago, a group of adjusters and contractors in San Diego started to have local meetings. There was a lot of fighting in San Diego between contractors and adjusters that had known each other for 10 years. And Watley and a few adjusters got together and said, hey, we need to have some meetings because we're all in claims here in San Diego and we should not have as much friction as we're having. We're friends. So let's talk. They started having quarterly meetings and that turned into conversations around what's reasonable and customary when invoicing. And every meeting, contractors and adjusters would bring an invoicing topic like garbage disposal, detach and reset, or a shower surround in a bathroom, things like that. And then they would look at Xactimate and determine what are the line items that people would use that would be reasonable and customary, what would be potentially unique line items that may be needed, but not always. And it just came down to a conversation of between contractors and adjusters. This is the work we do in the field. How can we charge for it such that it works for us contractors and it works for you adjusters? Joe, that was the beginning of Actionable Insights. It was local meetings between contractors and adjusters trying to have friendly conversations around we all want to do good work and get paid fairly. How can we do that together? And so when Actionable was founded, Cliff, the reason that it's a 501c6, number one, there is no equity. Nobody owns Actionable Insights. There's no shareholders, there's no dividends, there's no equity. Nobody can purchase us. So that was very important for us if we were going to start creating standards of invoicing to help people determine what was reasonable and customary. We did not want to be a for-profit entity where it could be perceived that we could be bought and our guidelines would be biased and swayed in any direction. So that was the number one. The number two, there's a lot of fighting in this industry in general. We didn't want to take a true side. Like we are pro-industry as an organization. That is the best and most complete way to say it. When we advocate for things, sometimes they're pro-carrier, sometimes they're pro-contractor, but you should all know that is always pro-industry of like, this is a change that needs to happen, we believe, for the industry to mature, become more efficient, for people to enjoy their jobs more. And there are tools out there, new tools like the Matterports and the DocuSketches of the world that we have adopted and helped people adopt to become more efficient and things like that. But as a 501c6, we are able to work with contractors. We are able to work with carriers in a unique way that most organizations can't, because they are either pro-contractor or pro-carrier. And as essentially the Switzerland of the industry, we just want to work with everybody and make sure that we can help the industry be as efficient as possible. So it was a very thoughtful decision to become a trade association. The other aspect is all the revenue that is generated by Actionable Insights has to be invested in our mission statement to preserve the health of the restoration ecosystem. So that's it. Like I've been doing this for about 7-8 years, gentlemen. I think I'll be doing this for another 20. Like this will be my career where all I do is work on trying to help the industry be better.
All right, let's go to halftime. When we come back, we're going to get into a little more detail on a few of the topics Seth just mentioned. Our association sponsors are AIHA, Healthy Workplaces, A Healthier World, AIHA.org. The Environmental Information Association, EIA's multidisciplinary membership collects, generates, and disseminates information concerning environmental and occupational health hazards in the built environment at EIA-USA.org. The IICRC, a nonprofit standards development and certifying body for the cleaning and restoration industry, IICRC.org. The Restoration Industry Association, the oldest and largest nonprofit professional trade association dedicated to providing leadership and promoting best practices through advocacy, standards, and professional qualifications for the restoration industry at restorationindustry.org. Actionable Insights. No more mistakes. No more missed line items in your Xactimate estimates at getinsights.org. Industry sponsors are Particles Plus. Feature-rich particle counters and air quality instrumentation. Count on us. ParticlesPlus.com. BioPlanet at byoplanet.com. Improving human, animal, and environmental health with electrostatic spray technology and advanced chemistries at byoplanet.com. All right, we're back for the second half with Seth Harrison. Cliff.
Thanks, Joe. Hey, Seth, a significant percentage of IAQ Radio listeners are industrial hygienists who are often called upon to prepare protocols for water damage restoration, mold remediation, fire restoration, hazmat cleanup, resolution of indoor air problems, and so on and so forth. I guess there's two questions. Number one, would these folks benefit from Actionable Insights? And then the second half is, would Actionable Insights benefit from helping or benefit from using these folks to help you build your content?
Great question. First off, can hygienists benefit from Actionable Insights? Yes. Now, typically, the hygienists that I've worked with in my career do not typically invoice and Xactimate. But the primary resources in our suite of products and services here is Xactimate related. And one of the things that we do for the industry is we work with the pricing department in Xactimate. Every 3 months, I meet with the pricing department where we advocate for the adoption of new line items that don't exist yet. We recognize we have thousands of entries every year. We have a line item request form on our website where we just collect data around, hey, what are people doing in the field that there's no line item for? Because if you can't charge for it efficiently, you can't get paid for it, and it's a problem for every claim. And so we advocate for the adoption of new line items. We clarify existing line items and things like that. So number one, hygienists out there, if you feel like Xactimate does not have the line items that you need to be able to invoice properly in Xactimate, let us know. Like, this is what we do. We collect feedback from around the industry and amplify your voices to make sure that the Xactimate price list can address what you do in our industry. Beyond that, you said, would Actionable Insights benefit from industrial hygienists? Yes. So, Cliff, this is actually in 2017, 7 years ago, when I joined Actionable Insights. The first thing we ever did was publish a 3,000-page book of Xactimate invoicing templates. It was called the Insight Sheet Database, and it was the first ever standard of invoicing that we could create around, hey, here's a book of templates for if you're doing this in the field, here's how you justify it. And fortunately and unfortunately, Mark Watley and Seth Harrison, as two contractors from San Diego, we don't know everything, Cliff. Surprise. We are not masters of everything and all the knowledge and all the building methodology in the world. So when we were writing that book, we started reaching out to industry experts, plumbers, electricians, adjusters, but as well as IICRC, OSHA, RIA, and industrial hygienists. Because if you're going to build an invoicing standard, you need to understand the process, the safety, the execution, the stuff that industrial hygienists do in our industry. And so we have been working with industrial hygienists over the last 7 years when we build new resources to make sure that our estimating guidelines can accommodate industrial hygienists and alike. So yeah, I mean, when you're invoicing for trauma and crime remediation, hazardous material remediation, cleaning, water mitigation, all of those categories in Xactimate, we have estimating guidance for when you're working in the actionable profile and alike. So yeah.
While we're talking, I just asked Grayson if he could just put up the website for Actionable Insights. Now, you don't have members per se. How does it work?
Yeah, well, as a trade association, we kind of do have members.
That's what I'm a little confused on.
Yeah.
Straighten me out here, Seth.
Sure. Yeah, well, we call them insiders, right? Insighters. That's our subscribers and members of our trade association. When you are a member of Actionable Insights, you have a subscription on our website and you get access to various estimating resources based on your subscription. So if you head to, for example, go to membership resources, Grayson, up at the top there, and hit the plan matrix, membership plans, you'll see an example here of these are the different membership subscription plans if you would like to be a member of our trade association and have access to our resources. Everything we build, we put out there, and we put it out there at essentially the cost that it takes for us to do it, make it, maintain it, etc. As an educational nonprofit, that's part of the best part of this job, is that we get to put out really great stuff, and we're not trying to maximize everything. It's like, hey, this is the tool that people need. Here's what it costs for us to be able to do it, put it together. This is an incredibly small team. Like, I am executive director, but we have 2 to 3 primary employees. And so it is strange how much we are able to do with this small team. But yeah, so when you're a member, you are an insider and you have access to all of our resources that we build to help people write better estimates.
Cliff?
Good. Did you change this recently? Because I think I looked at it, several months ago. And did you do away with the lowest category? Wasn't there another category that was lower than the plus plan at one point?
Good question, Cliff. Yes, we did actually.
Okay.
There's a new opportunity, a new venture coming that I might preview a little bit later that our website is preparing for. Essentially, for a very long time, the best way that we could provide estimating guidance was via the actionable profile, when people write in our profile. But we will now be able to deliver our alerts, our estimating guidance, via more than just our profile. So we had to make sure our website is up to date and ready to explain and announce the different ways that you can get actionable estimating guidance in Xactimate now.
It would seem to me that I'm just wondering, someone like myself who does a lot of restoration consulting, both for insurance carriers and for, contractors, policyholders, and so on and so forth. I don't have Xactimate. I used to have computer programs. I don't have it because typically I'm not writing the estimate. What I'm writing, it may be the protocol. on what needs to be done, and then
Okay.
the person that's going to execute that protocol, can put it into their pricing and so on and so forth. It would seem to me that perhaps because there is more than one estimating system, I understand that Xactimate's dominant. There are a couple of others, and some insurance carriers have, you can't work for them unless you utilize the software program that they're utilizing. It might seem to me that opening up your technology to other programs, or to not totally be within Xactimate, might make a certain amount of sense in terms of widening the base of who this might appeal to.
And in the future, Cliff, we might be able to do that. But the reason we started with Xactimate is because we were invited by Verus to build something inside of their software.
Okay.
So that's the other part about this. What we do, the actionable profile is a profile in Xactimate. And if you have used Xactimate in the past and you start to create a new estimate, it's going to ask you, what profile do you want to work in? Contractor, carrier, maybe a carrier specific profile, or now the actionable profile. So our guidance does not exist outside of Xactimate. It is a built-in tool that essentially points out that you're making a mistake or that you forgot to include a line item while you're working in Xactimate. So eventually, Cliff, in the future, if other invoicing platforms want to invite us into their system and for us to build similar things, that might be a possibility. But as of right now, we were invited 3 years ago by Verus to say, Verus basically said, hey, we've worked with you guys for a long time. You published a 3,000-page book of invoicing templates. You guys obviously have an idea of how to provide estimating guidance and what would be reasonable and customary. Would you guys at Actionable Insights like to build out your guidance into a profile? And we said, absolutely, please. Like, Joe, all I've ever wanted to do was help. And for many, many years, the best way that Actionable could help was training and traveling around, flying around the country to whoever could bring us out and helping them adopt Matterport, helping them understand Xactimate better, all of these things. But now it does not require training and traveling for Actionable Insights to be able to provide you with everything we know all the time in real time. Like, think about that. In order to get Xactimate training in the past and to get better, you had to go to a class, you had to go to a trainer, you had to do something to go and spend time. Now, estimating guidance exists inside of Xactimate so that you can just do your work and you will be reminded and trained in real time as to what you might be doing wrong or what you should be including.
Cliff, before we go to the roundup, I want to see if you have another question, because during the roundup, I'd like to get Seth to do what he did with us earlier in the week.
Yeah, I think that what my comment is, or question is, would most likely lead into that, because I was thinking about our conversation afterwards, most likely the same as you were. And, it seemed to me that the analogy for their profile, and Seth may agree or disagree with this. I was thinking about it. If I wanted to learn how to fly an airplane, I have this flight instructor, and that flight instructor is with me, when I'm taking off, when I'm landing the plane, and so on and so forth. And he lets me do stuff that I want to do, but then he's there to correct me if I'm going to make a mistake and, crash his aircraft, which most likely he owns or whatever. And I was just wondering whether Seth would agree with that analogy or not. But
I really like that. I don't think I've heard it said that way. I've heard a lot of different examples of how do you explain live estimating guidance in Xactimate. I love the idea of essentially a pilot trainer right behind you, not letting you do whatever you want, but we'll make sure you don't mess it up. I've heard the fire alarm analogy. A fire alarm only goes off when there's smoke. So that's the live estimating guidance that exists. It's only going to go off if there's a problem, right? That's the whole idea of an alarm's going off. I need to look at it and figure out what's going on. But the example I've used historically is the bumper guards of bowling. That's what we were talking about.
That's right.
Essentially, like, I'm gonna bowl. I could leave the bumper guards out and I might throw a gutter ball. But in property insurance, we don't have any time or space for gutter ball estimates, gutter ball scopes, gutter ball claims. There's no room for that in this industry. So the actionable profile just puts up a couple bumper guards, We can't guarantee you'll hit a strike, but gosh darn it, you're not going to throw a gutter ball when you're estimating in the actionable profile. Like, we will make sure we clean up mistakes. We will make sure you include warranted line items by providing you alerts while you're working in via live estimating guidance.
All right, let's go to the roundup, and when we come back, we're going to Grayson, if you could give Seth the ability to share his laptop, his computer there. We're going to go into the program here, which I found as a consultant who's never had done an Xactimate estimate, really helped me picture what the restoration guys are going through here. So let's go to the roundup, Grayson. Today's roundup is brought to us by Actionable Insights at getinsights.org. All right, let's turn it over to Seth. Just kind of walk us through the process and the actionable profile and how that works.
Absolutely. All right. Coming in here, sharing the screen. Thank you, Grayson. All right. I have shared my screen here. Can you guys see that A-OK?
Yes.
Nice. Wonderful. Okay. This is Xactimate. X1 on a desktop. And typically when you start a new estimate, you choose what profile you want to work in. And so this is what I was referencing earlier. We have the contractor profile, we have the carrier profile. Those profiles are default. They come with Xactimate. But as you'll see here, there's a third option for the actionable profile. So this is actually a profile option inside of Xactimate. And I'm going to create an estimate earlier that I'll bring over. This is essentially a brand new estimate in the actionable profile. And one of the things that I just collapsed, but I'm going to call out and bring back, is on the right-hand side of Xactimate. There is a new drawer. I'm going to pop it open now and click a little bit over here so you can see where I'm highlighting on the right side here. This drawer is called Exact Expert. It is a new inspection engine that is available in Xactimate. And when we talk inspection engines, some of you may remember trying to hit complete and trying to hit inspect, and you would see a window that looks like this at the very end of your estimating process that tries to point out mistakes and that you need to clean up. And that was the primary goal of this inspection engine, just to make sure you didn't mess up. That was it.
And that's an Xactimate thing, right? That's
yes,
not yours. Okay.
Yes, this is all in Xactimate.
Gotcha.
So what's new is this drawer on the right side allows us to provide guidance in real time while people's working. We do not have to wait until the end of the estimate anymore to be able to provide guidance and when we're hitting complete. Now we can do it in real time. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to add, Cliff, our favorite line item, WTR dry, one of the first line items in Xactimate. And I will go ahead and zoom in here a little bit so you guys can start to, make sure we can capture all of this. But
yes.
If you noticed on the right side of the screen, 3 alerts just popped up. So we added one line item around charging for an air mover. And right now I'm getting guidance that, hey, floor protection may be warranted. It appears I'm doing mitigation work, so don't forget about floor protection. I have charged for equipment, but not the time to set it up, take down, or monitor. So let's not forget to actually charge for the labor required to deploy this equipment, as well as, hey, you're doing mitigation work. It may warrant lead testing in this environment. So that's one line item. And that gives you an example of, like, I had one line item and 3 alerts quickly pop up saying, ooh, based on this, you might need this. Ooh, based on this, you might need this. Here's one of my...
Well, real quick, you got my attention with that lead one, because I would say lead and or asbestos, but maybe you didn't.
I think there is a different alert that triggers off of other activities. So that's what's beautiful about this, Joe. What I have figured out over the last 3 years is that through this tool, we can provide guidance on almost anything. And I'll give you some very specific examples very soon. Cliff, what were you going to say there?
No, I was going to say Joe made an excellent point with that, because, you have a lot of ceilings in California that are blown and, those popcorn ceilings and so on and so forth. A lot of those contain asbestos and so on and so forth. The fact that you're moving air around, I think that personally, I think the concern for asbestos would be higher even than the concern for lead. I'm not sure what
that's
Joe
fair. Joe, I'll give you an example. We used a WTR line item there for water mitigation, and that is why the guidance is around lead testing and mitigation. If somebody had used HMR codes, then they would have gotten an alert saying, hey, is there abatement involved? Don't forget about
what's an
uh,
HMR?
hazardous material remediation.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
these are the different, here, I'll show you real quick, the different category codes in Xactimate. And so when we're talking HMR, that's hazardous material remediation, versus WTR, which is just typical water extraction and remediation.
Gotcha.
Here's another example. For all my repair people out there, or certainly for anybody that's ever deployed a dumpster in your entire career to a job site, okay? I have purchased 2 driveways in my career because I forgot to properly protect the driveway when I put a dumpster on it.
Wow.
And so here's an example of an alert. I just added DMO dump, a dumpster load, approximately 20 yards, 4 tons of debris. There is an alert in our profile that says when utilizing a roll-off dumpster, it may be warranted to augment the dumpster with water-resistant OSB plywood material to protect the given driveway from cracking or leaving impressions. So I don't want people to purchase driveways anymore. I want people to understand what it properly takes to deploy a dumpster, the protection that you need to put underneath it, and the line items that would be reasonable and customary to charge for those activities. That's the goal, right? And that's why the actionable profile now exists for us at Actionable to be able to provide live estimating guidance, looking for 2 things primarily: overages. Where did you make a mistake? Did you use mutually exclusive line items? Do you have too much quantity of something to be reasonable, like based on the other line items in your scope?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing we're looking for, Joe, is omissions. Based on what you've done so far, what might you need to also charge for, but you have not included yet? And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring over a completed estimate. This was sent to us as part of a private training engagement. This is a $52,000 scope in Xactimate. And you'll notice on the right side, 13 warnings, 105 cautions. All of these alerts are essentially opportunities for improvement. And when you're working in the actionable profile, it's very specific. Warnings are potential mistakes. You might have done something wrong that you need to clean it up before you submit this to the carrier. Things like, hey, you are using a line item for drywall that includes texture, and then you're charging for extra texture. That might be a problem. You should clarify via F9 notes or like that those are different and not related, because if you're already charging for texture in an included line item and then you charge for texture on top of that texture, it could be seen as duplicative in nature and not warranted. Another example down here of under the caution side of omissions. Oh gosh, think about all the add-on line items that people forget in Xactimate. This person was doing wood flooring in this room. It might need quarter round. It might need reducer strips. It might need T-moldings. It might need end molding. Don't forget about floor leveling. Oh my goodness, the amount of floor leveling that people forget to charge for. But this is one of my favorite alerts here. You'll note that the guidance basically says, hey, you have a tall room. Your sketch is tall. This room is over 20 feet high, essentially. Because you're working at height and you're doing drywall in this room, there is a line item, an additional line item for the difficulty of working at height in drywall. And so you can actually charge more because you are working at height for the additional labor concessions to work at that inefficiency at that height. So there have been so many times in my career that I can remember where I missed a line item. I forgot something. There are line items in Xactimate over my 10-year career that I have learned, memorized, and forgotten 20 times. So it does not matter if I am the best estimator of all time or if I'm the newest estimator of all time. This is a tool that will help me when I'm working, and it will always show me things relevant to what I'm doing. It's not going to show me guidance that I don't care about. It is looking at what I'm doing, and based on what I'm doing, it's going to help me do a better job.
Now, the other thing I found fascinating is how this is tied in with Matterport. I wasn't familiar with Matterport. I've never used it. Can you show our audience a little bit?
Yeah. Specifically with Matterport. Matterport is a geospatial scanning software and hardware, essentially creating digital models of the properties. And if you haven't heard of Matterport yet, it's okay. Joe, I think it's funny. I've been speaking on stages about Matterport for 5 years, 6 years. In 2018, when you would ask an audience, who here has never seen a Matterport scan? Every hand would go up. This year, Joe, I've spoken about Matterport twice. One person in the crowd, that's it, has not seen a Matterport scan before. So I will bring up a Matterport scan, and I want to clarify something you said there. The actionable profile is not related to Matterport. The actionable profile is just for Xactimate, and if you're trying to write better estimates, the actionable profile is the tool that will provide that live estimating guidance. But here at Actionable, what we do is we try to create things and adopt things that help people do their work more efficiently. We feel like contractors every year are asked to do more and more upfront, whether it's documentation, justification, claim settlement, communication. Contractors are always asked to do more and more upfront every year. And so we at Actionable feel like it's our responsibility to identify tools and resources in the industry that people can use to be able to handle that larger workload every year. And Matterport to us is one of those tools that help people be more efficient. You get more information earlier in the process. You capture it in ways that have not been possible previously, that help cover your butt risk liability wise, as well as write better scopes, communicate more effectively. And so I'll briefly show off the Matterport scan here if you haven't seen this before. We've been taking photos in this industry for 20 to 30 years because we needed to document what the property looked like, what damage was done, what do we need to do to put it back together. And what Matterport allows us to do is just graduate from photos. This is essentially evolving photos into a larger, more sophisticated documentation of a property. If I hit the 2 key on my keyboard, I'll go into the 3D mode here. Like you'll see, this is the 3D dollhouse view of this entire property. I can go up a level and you can see the upper loft and the upper garage, or the upper areas here, and I can go down a level and back over here. And what's very unique about this tool is the technology inside of the cameras. So Matterport makes their own cameras, Pro 2s, Pro 3s, but you do not need a Matterport camera to scan. That's something that everybody should know. Right now, if you have an iPhone or an Android in your pocket, you can scan an entire property with your phone with Matterport's technology. So the other thing about this is a lot of people have thought, oh, there's a $10,000 barrier to entry to start using a Matterport or a DocuSketch or alike, and there's not. I mean, you can use the existing thing in your pocket to get going. Now, why does this tool matter? Well, I'll hit the measurement button and you'll start to see what's possible with this tool. In fact, I'm going to hit the R key and go up a floor. I love hotkeys, gentlemen. I like being efficient with a keyboard. But I'll try to come, we'll come to this closet for a moment just to show you, like, hey, I need a ceiling height. Okay, I got it. 7'11". Perfect. That's an 8-foot ceiling. Let's come over to the bathroom. All this time that I historically spent driving to a job site, trying to get there, trying to take photos, dealing with homeowners, dealing with dogs, dealing with all the inefficiencies of being in somebody's home. And now, as an estimator, as an adjuster, I can get all the information I need to be able to process a claim, to sketch a property, to write a scope via Matterport's technology without ever actually having to be on site. So I think, yes, I find this to be an incredibly effective tool. One of the things that we've been talking about in property insurance is, I mean, we're in the age of information, gentlemen. We were in the age of information. Let me be clear. In my opinion, we're starting to hit the age of automation. For some people, that's terrifying. For others, it's exciting. But it mostly just means there are going to be new ways to do things. And one of the things that we talk about at Actionable Insights when we train is one of the most dangerous phrases in restoration is, we've always done it this way. Joe, to me, the way people do it might be the best way to do it. But if your only answer to that question of why do you do things the way you do them? Well, because we've always done it this way. That might not be the best answer anymore. I find it very, very important in 2024 and beyond for contractors of any sort in this industry to be paying attention to what's happening when it comes to new technology and new resources, because there are people out there actively trying to solve hard problems for this industry. And I want people to be excited about trying something new or different just to see if it works for them. Every tool is used differently by people in this industry. Nobody uses Matterport the same. There are thousands of people using Matterport every day, and they all use it a little differently. So that's the best part about some of these tools like Matterport and DocuSketch. It makes it possible for people to add the technology and use it how they want in their job process.
Seth, it looks like we're going to run over 5 minutes or so. Do you have time to stay with us?
Yeah, no worries.
Great. Cliff, let me turn it over to you.
Thanks, Joe. Let's see.
Just want to make sure you got in every question. We still have a few on the list here, and it's a little hard.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about, some of the complaints that you commonly get from adjusters. And I think one of those complaints is that you're nickel diming me. You're charging for this and you're charging for that, and so on and so forth. And I can see how some adjusters or some TPAs, kind of might object to some of the charges that, may have been missed, previously, or may have been considered included previously, that your profile is pointing out. And I had a great friend, this guy, a guy named Greg Orndorff. He passed away a long time. He's a phenomenal estimator. And he, like you, felt that the adjuster was not the enemy, but the adjuster was the opponent. And it was like a chess game. And, I need to know what the rules are. And if I learn, I study, I can become a better chess player. And many, many years ago, I heard him talk at an RIA convention. And he talked about, cleaning and painting this bathroom. And he took an estimating program. This was pre-Xactimate, and he kind of put it up there. And then he went back and he kind of came up with all these unique different things. And one of the things he came up with that I, and probably anyone that was there, will never forget, is that in most bathrooms, the toilet is kind of butted up against the wall. And how are you going to clean behind the toilet? How are you going to paint behind the toilet? Or how are you going to seal behind the toilet? And, his answer to that was, well, we need to remove, and then we need to reset the toilet. And I forget what the charge was at that time. It was like $35 or, whatever.
The line item is PLM TLTRS. I know the line item well.
Correct. So in any event, he came up with exactly, what you're doing. And I think that your approach is right, that, these guys aren't the enemy. And in certain situations, we have to educate them on how to play their own game, because they haven't been, if they're in and out in less than 2 years.
Yeah, especially now, right?
Right. Yeah. If they're in and out, we have to educate them about kind of how to play their game better, it would seem to me. But in any event.
One thing that I think, program work, non-program work, it doesn't matter. Everything in Xactimate comes down to documentation and justification. Like, if you cannot justify why you are doing something, then you will not get paid for it. And here's a joke that we make in training. Like when somebody hires us for private training, I say, hey, I'm going to add, if you're flying, okay, I'm a Southern California dude. If you're going to fly me to the East Coast in winter, I'm going to charge you for a very large jacket because I don't own any of those here. So I'm going to add it to your bill. Now, is a contractor going to pay for my line item on my invoice for a very large, heavy, warm jacket? No, they're not. Right, exactly. Right. So the saying is, you can bill for anything in this industry all the time. You can bill for anything. Doesn't mean you're going to get it. Doesn't mean you're going to collect. Doesn't mean it's going to get paid. But you can bill for anything. And once we understand that, then it really just comes down to, okay, what's reasonable? What's customary? And here's, Cliff, where we train. This is why certain things matter more than they used to. Contractors used to be judged by adjusters by how tight your containment was on a job site. You would meet the adjuster on site. They would look at the work that you performed, and they would say, this is a good contractor or a bad contractor. However, there are less field adjusters every year. That is universal in this country. There are less adjusters meeting you on site at job sites. That's happening less and less. So if all of that is true, then we need to make sure that we are documenting and justifying. And here's a fun fact. How you format and organize your estimate can actually change how much you end up getting paid. This is something that I've studied for the last 5 years. A lot of contractors have not historically put a ton of thought into the organization of their line items, bolding headers, space notes in between line items to make it more clear how this estimate is put together. Like, think about a properly formatted book with a table of contents and an index, and all the chapters are in order, right? That's the level of detail that contractors should be tackling their scoping, tackling their estimates. And there's a lot of tools out there like macros, things like that, that will allow you to work efficiently, but still put forth the important part of formatting an organization. So when we talk about estimating and actionable, we want to recognize your digital brand, how you present yourself via your scopes, is just as important now as how tight your containment is. If you have a sloppy looking estimate, then it's going to be hard to get paid for those things. But if you break out, for example, drywall activities, Cliff, here's one of the number one things that I used to get pushback on as a program estimator. Drywall activities, and then I'm going to charge for drywall masking. And there's an F9 note that says drywall masking is removed upon completion of the drywall phase. And then the next chapter of my estimate says paint activities. And the next line item is painting protection, with an F9 note that says painting protection is removed upon completion of the painting phase. Now, why did I start formatting my estimates like that? Because I was told once many years ago that I already charged for drywall protection, so I could not charge for painting protection. And I had to quickly explain to them, these are two very different types of protection done by two different trades that are on the job site on 2 different days. A painter does not use a drywaller's protection to do their work. So this is an example of like when people just throw a bunch of line items in there and put a little bit of formatting into there, you can get a lot of pushback because people are going to push back on things they don't understand or they're not sure. Adjusters are always going to push back if they need to clarify. One of our big tenets of training is answers before questions. 15 to 30% of your line items in your Xactimate scope should have F9 notes explaining them there. Like if you've been in the industry for a while and you've written some estimates, you know what the hard line items are. You know what the problems are. Like you've had the arguments before. So get ahead of them by adding F9 notes and additional documentation to make sure you're addressing the questions before they come.
Seth, fascinating stuff. I'm glad we were able to get you on. Cliff, you have any final thoughts or questions?
I'm good, Joe. I'm good.
Before we go, we always like to ask our guests, give you the last word, anything we missed or anything you'd like to add.
No, gentlemen, thank you. I have participated in the RA for years. I'm currently on the pricing task force committee. I very much appreciate everything you guys have done and are doing for us in this industry. If anybody here is interested in learning more about the live estimating guidance that you can use in the Actionable Profile, Joe, you've read our website out multiple times. I'll do it one more time. Getinsights.org. Getinsights.org. Come check us out. We have the Actionable Profile plus a bunch of other resources. It never hurts to be familiar with one of the educational nonprofits in the industry that might be able to help you a little bit.
Absolutely. Seth Harrison, thanks for joining us today. I want to thank Seth. I want to thank my co-host, the Z-Man, Cliff Zlotnick, Grayson, Gone Fishing Fisher at the controls. Most importantly, our loyal audience and our sponsors. Will be back next Friday at noon with the next episode of IAQ Radio Plus.
For IAQ Radio, I'm Spike Reel saying thanks for listening.